Yeah.
I've got a general question I want to put to the whole panel, and whoever wants to can jump in on it. So it goes like this. This topic is being talked about, as is always the way in League of Legends, as if it's like, you know, Asia is just this vague area where they succeed somehow, who knows how, cargo, call, blah, blah, blah. LPL does great, LCK has its own hype viewership and the cheerball stuff, but everyone clumps the West together. But here's the problem, Danon. For about something like, I'm going to say, like 85% of the history of competitive League of Legends, North America was where all the money and all the sponsors were, and Europe was where they had better actual League of Legends players, but way less of all those things. Way less people who are VC companies who put money in. We're smaller sponsors even. And yet, we exist in a world where simultaneous to this discussion we're having about, like, essentially the most popular North American team ever, TSM's just left the league. EG was even like a champion a year ago. They're gone. Golden Guardians was top 2. They're gone. And slots now go for 6 million, 10 million, 8 million a go. Meanwhile, right now, there was that news reported that Carmine Corp is buying 66.7% of like a fucking, like, essentially like a shell company that then they share the spot with Astralis in the LEC, and that cost for 2/3 of the slot was something like £15 million, which is about $19 million if people don't know. So $19 million for one of the smaller, not even a team with a massive fan base either, by the way. Carmine Corp has it, but obviously Astralis doesn't have an existing huge fan base in the European League of Legends. Do you have any reason why? Because it's not like, look, the viewership's better in LEC, but it's not like LEC is like, it's not like LEC is like 10 years ago in NA with all the sponsors and the crazy input of money. Do you have a sense for why LEC is considered still quite profitable and people buy slots even in eSports winter for, I mean, we're talking like almost double the price of an LCS slot. Do you have any thoughts on this, anyone?
I mean, I can touch on a little bit of what I think we're seeing specifically there, and it's a pretty similar parallel to something that happened that we actually haven't talked about, which is the CLG NRG transition. I actually, like, I don't think that's like someone on the outside who like sees their opportunity, sees a window, they want to get involved. I think there's still a lot of passion and interest internally to each of these spaces, and I think what you're really seeing there is like an argument over how passionate either of them are in the space, that these are the few people who still have optimism, and in order to carry that optimism for everyone, they have to have so much more to account for all of the pessimism we're seeing across the industry. And I actually would challenge and say it's actually really, really weird. If you guys didn't hear, my understanding is that money didn't really change hands on the CLG NRG transition.
No, it didn't.
My understanding is that MSG, in theory, traded a portion. Well, they basically traded the entirety of CLG and its corpse for a portion of NRG. I think we're basically we're going to see a handful of these types of like mergers and deals. We're seeing it right now. What with V1 Roker. And is it G2 who just acquired them? I think this is just like further consolidation. And I actually don't like that amount of money is kind of irrelevant. That's just like basically already existing endemic teams trading against their value internally in the same way that you could probably expect someone like C9 would do if they were outside of the LCS trying to get in, right? Like it's like a lot of the same idea of a structure of how you make these deals when you just don't have capital floating all over the place anymore.
Yeah, and I was going to say as well, I mean, what you have to remember about that particular deal, the Carmine Corp one, is that they have been tooting the horn about all the great stuff they're going to do at their new stadium. You know, their totally real new stadium that they built, as it was reported, and it wasn't. It's just, you know, it's just an existing stadium that's being refurbished. But anyway... they have pledged, and keep in mind, Macron, he likes esports and video games again after saying that they were the cause of those riots, but he likes them now. And he says that basically what he's going to do is...
We're not as big a fan of Top Cocktail and CSGO, but aside from that, you know.
No, bizarrely no. But yeah, he's so what's happening now is there's all this like French subsidy money coming in. So Carmine Corp have this stadium. They need to fill that stadium. I believe 25 events is what's been pledged. So yeah, you want to get bums on seats. Probably makes sense to have a fucking League of Legends team, given that it is ostensibly still the most popular game in the world. But what I'll also add there as well, the
joke is they're doing a campaign where each of their fans just has to remember to attend an esports event every time they wash each year. Keep going.
Not bad. But yeah, but also, you know, I think in regards to that deal, I would keep an eye on that because that seems very strange. That when you look at the Astralis share ownership and then the Carmine Corp deal and the timing of it all after because if you remember, Astralis had just done some delisting off the NASDAQ and bought back a ton of shares on the cheap.
Yeah.
Just before that was announced, I don't know. I don't know enough about that financial world, but it might be worth looking at. But yeah, I don't like all these things where it's like it's Carmine Corp, they've got 66% of the slot, but Astralis is still a minority owner and all this. There's too much fuckery in esports. I think if you're going to buy these franchises, buy these slots, you should have to buy them outright or not at all. But anyway, but yeah, sorry, go on. Yeah.
I was going to say, hearing what you just spoke on, it kind of sounds not too dissimilar from what we actually saw happen with FlyQuest. Obviously, Bucks ownership won it out, and they were looking for someone. The timing for them could not have been better, obviously, as we see now. But I've actually met with that new ownership of FlyQuest, and they have a really interesting perspective that sounds similar to what you're talking about here with Carmine Corp. They have an NHL franchise, and they want to see what they can adapt from esports to obviously continue. You were saying there's stick and ball problems already in sports proper, dragging people over, and I think that's something that FlyQuest definitely for sure internally probably talks about. That's why you would expect an NHL franchise to walk in the way that they did, and that's not too dissimilar from saying, hey, we have a venue in France and that we need to put people in.
Yeah, no, but this is what I mean. This is just one of the ridiculous things with esports in general and these failing leagues in general. If you look at all of the trends that have been happening, content-wise, broadcast-wise, structure-wise, in sports, there's been loads of stuff that's been lifted from esports and loads of stuff that's been lifted from sort of digital culture and where we're at with it right now. I mean, even the talk show. Fucking the late night talk show, the therapy for fucking American liberals, one of the Stevens or whatever the fuck.
I would point out NFL co-streaming with the Manning brothers is probably a better adaptation, but yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, but exactly. All of a sudden they were all doing it at home during the pandemic, and it looked exactly like a Twitch stream. And now, you've got co-streaming going on there. They're lifting loads of stuff from things we pioneered in esports, and that's why copying these outdated models that kids don't fuck with at all is so ridiculous to try and it's the core problem we've got, that we built a bunch of stuff. We never got over our inferiority complex in esports. We always wanted to be something we're not. And it goes right the way back to the days of fucking, the early 2000s with dickheads putting on tuxedos and stood there with a microphone, when you're inside a fucking gym with 50 nerds in the background. There's always been this ridiculous, we want to be the big guys. And it's I don't know, why don't we build our thing up organically the way that makes sense for us and see if we become the big guys? Because that's how they did it. That's how the NBA did it. That's how the NFL did it.
I mean, it's also the NBA is now moving. Everybody was obsessed with doing these league structures, and now the NBA is slowly introducing the mid-season tournament and trying to spice things up, because even traditional sports are realizing that what esports did, because we were unfettered by 100 years of previous play, that some of the things esports was doing is actually just better. It's just better at this point in history. And we had these morons who were in charge of these companies who were trying to copy what had already gone on, instead of just using the evidence that was in front of their faces, that a lot of the stuff that esports had created organically from endemic minds was actually really working well prior to the establishment of some of these leagues and other structures in the 2012 through 2017 era.
That's another cheeky thing I can pseudo confirm. That is something that was touted pretty consistently internally, that the NBA was unironically paying attention and listening to things like the LCS and esports broadly as they walked forward with this formatting. That was actually, those were names that were invoked at NBA ownership meetings with respect to how to make things better, pivot. And I think we're seeing some of the same stuff happen with, I don't know if you follow baseball, MLB's made a lot of what we would probably call very conservative changes for actual baseball.
I think those changes
very
are great.
aggressive very, very aggressive, very progressive changes actually for their sport. So I think we're going to see that happen more broadly, more consistently, and I imagine they'll just continue to adapt as we continue like growing whatever we're trying to grow here now.
Yeah, whatever it is.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.